What is up, everybody? It's your boy, Isaac of the Dead, back with another video. Right now, we are going to talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day. It just released. If you have not seen my spoiler-free review and you don't want to be spoiled, I highly suggest you go back and you watch my spoiler-free review because this video will be getting into heavy spoilers for the film. So stop what you're doing right now, click off this video, go find my spoiler-free review and watch that, or just go see the movie yourself. It is a actually really decent movie. It's worth seeing, and so I suggest you see the movie before you watch this video. I wouldn't say that it's something that is an absolute necessity, but it is Spider-Man, so I don't blame you for going to see it anyway. So from here on, spoilers, 3, 2, 1. All right, we're going to go into spoiler territory now. The story takes place a couple years, probably 4 or 5 years after No Way Home. Peter has been going around as Spider-Man, fighting all the different villains we see in the trailer. He fights Tarantula, what looked like Rhino. There was Boomerang, a lot of different characters that you saw in the trailer. Unfortunately, that was more of a montage, and we were expecting it would be kind of a montage, but it was a very short montage to open the film. And while as great as it was, I would like to have seen more of it for sure. Because it was actually something that was really nice to see. All the comic book covers being paid homage to, and Spider-Man saving people, him fighting bad guys. Like, I liked it, man. I liked that stuff. I was fucking with that. But he's been kind of slowly stalking MJ and Ned, kind of Superman Returns style, because he misses them. They don't have the memories because of the Doctor Strange spell. So naturally, he's been longing to connect with them and meet with them again. Meanwhile, while he's on his business, saving people in the city, there's a tank that rolls by. Somebody is driving the tank, and Frank Castle, the Punisher, shows up, and he's chasing the tank. So that's when we see an introduction of Frank Castle in this movie, and we find out that the tank has been driven by this old lady who had been mind controlled. So now we wonder, okay, who's mind controlling this old lady? And so the Department of Damage Control, which from what I understand was the same Department of Damage Control from Daredevil Born Again, but I'm not going to worry about the continuity errors there. Because I honestly I forgot a lot of what happened in Daredevil Born Again, because the show is dog shit. But essentially, we find out that there is somebody who is using telepathy to possess people. So the mystery becomes about who this villain is. And so Spider-Man, he takes out Scorpion, and Scorpion was the next lead. And so this person who has telepathy is screwing with Peter Parker now. If you know the leaks, you know already who this is. I knew this was Jean Grey before seeing the movie. I knew that ahead of time. The casting of Sadie Sink was almost obvious. And so when they revealed that it was Jean Grey, I was not nearly as surprised as a lot of other people in the theater were. And, fair to them, I get it. Normies, they love that stuff. Normies, they will eat it up. But for me, it's like, okay, I get that you want to have a nice theater experience, clap and all that, have fun. But if you know about the leaks, it's not really a surprise anymore. It's hard to get hyped for it. But nonetheless, Jean Grey is possessing these people, and then Peter decides to get ballsy, and he follows Ned. Ned shows up at like one of those like pharmacy or like alcohol stores or something. And Peter follows him to a party that Ned and MJ just opened up their apartment for. And we find out that MJ is with Paul. Yeah, we saw that in the trailer. So he's barely in the movie, but that moment where Peter tries to introduce himself under fake aliases to MJ and Ned to try and reconnect with them, he sees Paul with MJ, and then he kind of spirals a little bit. It takes a little bit from Spider-Man 2, I think, in terms of, I'm sure there's a deeper, lore reference here that I'm not going to bother working out right now. But essentially, seeing Paul kiss MJ sends him into a spiral to where now his powers are starting to mutate. Why are they starting to mutate? Spider-Man's hitting puberty, I think. The way that they describe it is Spider-Man hits puberty. his powers are maturing as he turns from Spider Boy into Spider Man, and so it's like he's hitting puberty or something, and he gets the organic web shooters in his wrist that are conflicting with the non-organic, technical web shooters. And so now the rest of the movie, he's battling this because he's got conflicted feelings. MJ is with this Paul guy, and now Spider-Man's got these new powers, and he's trying to figure out who Jean Grey eventually is, and we find out later after Jean Grey possesses MJ and fucks with Peter's head and says, "Oh, she knew who Peter was when she used the telepathy, right? And then she possessed MJ's body to basically screw with his head and be like, oh, I knew all along that you were Peter Parker." And then it was basically a cock tease. It was a pretty evil thing to do. Among the many evil things that Jean Grey does in this movie that are completely swept under the rug because they play Jean Grey off as a victim. So Peter goes to New York State University, I think, to find Bruce Banner to see how Bruce Banner deals with his mutation. Bruce Banner has a inhibitor on his wrist that keeps him from turning into Hulk. And so Peter's trying to create an inhibitor to keep him from turning into a human spider, which it works for a while, but it nullifies his senses a little bit. So now he can't sense Jean Grey whenever she possesses somebody. And notice that I'm using the word possess because that is the villain term here to really apply to what Jean Grey is actually doing to these people. She's not using telepathy in the benevolent sense. She's doing it in a or benevolent sense. She's doing it malevolently. I can't even say the word. She's the bad guy. Jean Grey is the bad guy of this movie. They like to play it off that she was a victim of the Department of Damage Control doing this. And look, I get it. The Department of Damage Control was kind of the villain for sure, but like Jean Grey did way more heinous shits throughout the movie, from possessing people who were innocent to ultimately causing collateral damage with all of these people, especially driving a tank through a city where the Punisher got involved. So after that little incident happened, Peter takes MJ to the Punisher's, I guess, safe house, which is like in this abandoned Navy base or something like that. I don't know what it was. It was like a boat place. I don't know what to call that. But Frank was staying there, and so that was where there was a lot of character moments. We learn a little bit more about MJ and what her relationship is with Paul, how she feels after having her brain, wiped after No Way Home, and they get to kind of re-know each other after that, and we get to see some great banter between the Punisher and Spider-Man. Now, after that event where Jean Grey possessed MJ, she goes to basically possess the Hulk, taking off his inhibitor wrist thing and releasing Professor Hulk. I was a little bit disappointed that they started with Professor Hulk. I really didn't want to see Professor Hulk in this movie at all. I just was like, ugh, really? They brought back Professor Hulk even for a second. Like, it's just, ugh. It just don't remind me of Professor Hulk, please, for the love of God. But essentially, she possesses Professor Hulk, and then we get a fight scene between Professor Hulk, Spider-Man, and the Punisher. Spider-Man and the Punisher battling Professor Hulk. That was great. It was awesome. Now, I wish it was them battling Savage Hulk, but we ended up seeing a fight between Spider-Man and Savage Hulk because Bruce Banner ends up turning into Savage Hulk finally. And the crowd was actually really happy about this in my theater. So I was applauding that too. And I was like, you know what? I'm cheering for Savage Hulk. That was great. Now, eventually, Peter manages to stop Savage Hulk from killing him by basically saying that he's his friend. And then Hulk falls off a building because it was one little cool scene where Hulk's on the side of the building crawling, and then Spider-Man swings through the windows and wraps him up in webs. So that way there's a giant hole in the building and all the concrete is attached to the webs attached to the Hulk's back. And he's about to slide off the edge and fall 100 feet down below. Now, my big question was, is anybody okay? Like, did people get hurt from that? Were there people underneath the Hulk? I know he's going to survive. He's the Hulk. He's going to be fine. But the people that are underneath him, they're going to fucking die if he ends up landing on them. So that was the last of the Hulk that we saw in the movie. And then we see that Jean Grey is going to try and find out where this VMAX thing is. We're trying to find out what VMAX is. We see these hints of what VMAX is supposed to be. It's like a MacGuffin that Jean Grey is looking for that the Department of Damage Control is hiding from her. But the Department of Damage Control doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. So she gets apprehended by Spider-Man, and finally, the Department of Damage Control has her locked up. But before she gets locked up by the Department of Damage Control, say that 5 times as fast, she mentions a character's name, Sarah, which Peter asks as Spider-Man. Spider-Man asks the Department of Damage Control leader, president guy, whatever his name is. I honestly don't remember his name. But he said, "Oh, Sarah was my ex-wife, and she got into my head and read it." So later, we find out whenever Spider-Man reveals his, MJ finds out that Spider-Man is Peter. There's a revelation here, and they meet, and MJ finally finds out the truth about Peter and that he loves her. She finds a letter that he wrote for her at the end of No Way Home, and that was going to give to her at the coffee shop, but she doesn't remember anything. So she doesn't love him the way that he loves her because he remembers all the memories, but she doesn't. But she's willing to stay friends, and she brings him back to meet Ned at the apartment. Ned, I don't understand how this works, but I can also assume and speculate. He creates an app to track Spider-Man because Spider-Man, he has memories of Spider-Man saving him in high school and throughout the Homecoming series or whatever. And so he creates an app to track Spider-Man. Now, I imagine it's like people reporting to the app. People who get on the app, they'll report a sighting of Spider-Man, and that's how it works. But ultimately, it's kind of weird how they don't really explain how it works, right? And it kind of becomes an important thing later, especially when you get into the post-credit scene, because we'll get into the post-credit scene here in a little bit. But essentially, Ned and Peter and MJ have a moment where they all become friends. And they sit down, and Ned gets to ask Spider-Man all the questions. He doesn't get to know him that he's Peter until eventually he jumps off, and MJ says, "Good luck, Peter." And Ned's like, "His name is Peter?" That was kind of a funny moment. But Spider-Man figures out that the Department of Damage Control head guy was lying about his memory being jogged up by Jean Grey, because MJ did not remember for a second when she was possessed by Jean Grey. So he was lying, and they took Jean Grey into a supermax prison. And we find out that VMAX was a ventilator max, the label on the vent above her head, which I thought was kind of a stupid reveal. I thought that was a really dumb reveal. And it was just kind of a waste. It was a wasted potential for something that could have been good. But it ultimately leans into, we find out later, the origin of Jean Grey and her motivation for the story. Well, her sister, Sarah Grey, she was taken by the Department of Damage Control because she was a mutant. And so they don't say the word mutant in this movie. They just say special people. And so we find out that because she said VMAX, it's assumed that Sarah Grey was killed while she was in captivity by the Department of Damage Control. With that being said, Jean Grey is now seeking revenge against the Department of Damage Control, and she, finally figures out that, oh, my sister's last thing that she saw before dying was this giant supermax prison room. And so they try to play this as Jean Grey is the victim and that she is she is the sympathetic villain when she is just as evil as Wanda from both WandaVision and Doctor Strange mom. And that's the part that really irks me here. I would like to also note, if you are finding plot holes in this movie, trust me, there are a few. But some of them are filled by Yelena Belova. Yes, Yelena Belova, Florence Pugh, comes back in this movie. I'd fuck her so hard. No, but seriously, Spider-Man goes to Yelena because she's a part of the New Avengers, and her office is in a spa or something, and so she wants him to take his clothes off, and this is the scene that really irks me. This one bothered me because it's one thing to have a joke and be funny. This felt like a humiliation thing. This felt like it felt so fucked up. This movie is filled with things where Spider-Man gets cucked or humiliated. And I don't really like it, particularly this moment where we see Spider-Man having to take off his clothes to get into this spa, and then have Yelena tell him, "Have you seen that people think that you're gay and that they're making a bunch of fan art about you with 10 Mysterios surrounding you?" It's like, dog, stop, stop, stop. We don't know none of that. Stop it. Stop. So it's so disgusting too. It's so fucking gross. But she comes back and she helps sort of reveal, Jean Grey's origin to Spider-Man and help, find out who her sister is. So then Spider-Man goes to the Department of Damage Control. He fights off all of the Department of Damage Control soldiers. We find out early on in the film that the Hand offers their service to the Department of Damage Control, which I did not like because that takes away the agency of the Hand and why they are such a dangerous organization. So they completely nerfed the Hand in this movie. I'm not really happy about that. But we did see a really cool fight scene between Spider-Man and the Hand. The 6-on-1 fight scene between him and the Hand, which was fucking great. But most of the Hand was possessed by Jean Grey because she broke out of her bonds and started creating this force field within 100-mile radius of the city where she was at. And so on the far side of town, the Punisher gets up on a sniper and he's about to shoot Jean Grey because he's like, "Look, Spider-Man, I know you're trying to save her, but I'm going to do the Punisher thing to do it, and I'm just going to cap her ass." And so he's sitting up there with a sniper ready to shoot Jean Grey. Spider-Man breaks through the Hand, goes to Jean Grey, and tries to tell her, "Hey, you need to settle down. You are loved." All that, yada yada shit. She looks into his head and does telepathy and gets a pep talk from Aunt May, which I thought was really fucking weird that they would do that, but it's such an MCU thing to do. I did not like that. I did not like that because it was basically Aunt May affirming and verifying that Jean Grey is a victim and that she had done nothing wrong in this scenario and that she basically was justified in her position and she's loved. It was basically a softer version of when Photon said to Wanda at the end of WandaVision, "They'll never know what you sacrificed for them." Such a fucking dog shit quote, by the way. But that's what basically Aunt May did in this flashback memory from Peter Parker's, telepathized mind. And so Peter stops Jean Grey from attacking everybody. She realized that she's done things wrong, and so she just stops. Punisher shoots at her. Spider-Man jumps in the way and takes the bullet for her. And then he's about to die, but he's taken away to the hospital by the Punisher. A great little cameo where we see Punisher's holding Tom Holland's body. It looks fake, but I like that, cover because it's a homage to Civil War. And so Peter is brought to the hospital. He's worked on. Of course, he survives the end of the movie. Him and the Punisher have a nice little back and forth. And it's actually a moment where it's like the Punisher feels bad about shooting Spider-Man. Of course he would. The dude's got a heart of gold while still being traumatized. But I think it was nice to see a different side of the Punisher. It wasn't a complete assassination of the Punisher's character, but it was tipping on it. It was tipping on it a little bit. Because I was worried about it when I saw this movie. I was like, are we about to see PG Punisher? I don't really want that. It wasn't really PG Punisher, but it was not rated R Punisher. We'll just say that. And we find out that the people love Spider-Man. The people that were outside the hospital, cheering for his recovery. A bunch of kids dressed up as Spider-Man. They had signs, being hopeful for his recovery. Jean Grey gets away with no repercussions, no punishment, nothing whatsoever. She's just like Wanda at the end of WandaVision. Jean Grey does not face any sort of justice for the crimes she committed because she was played off as a victim. Meanwhile, the Department of Damage Control also gets away with most of the shit that they did. They don't really address, the illegal shit that they were doing. And then the movie ends with Spider-Man going back to find Ned, introduce himself, and they do the handshake that they did from No Way Home and Homecoming and all that, and Ned remembers. So he starts to click that it's Peter. And so the movie ends on kind of a cliffhanger where Ned remembers Peter. So where does that leave the future? I don't know, but Spider-Man will return. They confirmed it at the end of the movie, at the end credit scene. Now, about that post-credit scene, there is no mid-credit scene, so don't worry about a mid-credit scene, but a post-credit scene shows the spider tracker, right? The spider tracker that is, that Ned created, that app. Well, apparently the spider tracker sensed a Spider-Man coming from far in the cosmos. It's assumed this is leading into the multiverse. Some people think that it's Miles Morales. You fans, you guys are great. Fans are great. I appreciate you guys. Fuck the normies and fuck the activists. But I'm not a Miles Morales fan. But to those who are, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. I might disagree, but I appreciate you. I appreciate the passion. But ultimately, it was kind of a nothing burger of a post credit scene. But seeing how the tracker works, which they don't really explain in the movie itself, kind of makes it weird that the speculation of what this outside cosmic Spider-Man would actually be, because we don't know how the app actually works. How does this, how do people track Spider-Man? Do they report something? If that's the case, who's reporting that Spider-Man is out in the cosmos? They don't really explain it. So that's the movie. That's it. So there are things that I like. Things that I like, the action sequences. The action sequences are fucking great. Some of the best live action Spider-Man action sequences we've seen in a long time. And it was creative ways that they used the webs, creative ways that he fought the Hulk and Punisher, and the hand was the great scene. I fucking love that. I forgot to mention that during the hand scene, Peter sort of comes to terms with his new mutation, trying to fit that inhibitor chip in his neck, but he drops the inhibitor chip and just kind of accepts it, and so he becomes more like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, where he's mutated into a more natural Spider-Man. Now, what does that mean? I don't know, because I was assuming that the mutation was going to turn him into the human spider. It was a weird direction to go, but at the same time, I don't know. There's a lot of themes of like growing and evolving and all that stuff, which I'm fine with. I'm cool with, but I just feel like there was a better chance to do that, and there's a better way to do that. But ultimately, I did not like the hand getting cucked. Early on, the idea of the hand just submitting to the Department of Damage Control, and their reasoning for it is, oh, it's just a bunch of lost kids that need a leader. It's like, no, it's the hand. They are a Japanese like a ninjutsu organization. They are not a bunch of lost kids. They are ninjas. But yeah, that was stupid. I didn't like that. I like the Punisher. I like the Punisher in the movie. I like the back and forth that John Bernthal and Tom Holland had. I thought it was great. There was great chemistry there. I do not like Mark Ruffalo. Mark Ruffalo brought down the Hulk in this movie. I thought that was fucking lame. The scene where he was as a professor at the university, it came off as like, why? Why would he be a professor at the university when he's an Avenger? We're wondering where the Avengers are, but why is he here? And of course, all the students want to know about his Avenger stories, because he can't even teach quantum physics anymore. He just tells Avenger stories. But what else? Zendaya. She does a good act for the movie. She acts better in this movie than she does in most stuff. But she's still Zendaya. I can't really get over that. Her acting is very two-dimensional. It's better than bad, but it's not great. You know what I mean? She's not a good MJ. She's never been MJ. In fact, we find out that she was majoring in like genealogy and like rocket science or some shit like that. MJ is a theater grad. MJ Watson does theater, and she's more artsy fartsy. So the fact that we have a women in STEM MJ, who's also a person of color or whatever, it's not MJ. Most people who know Spider-Man lore would agree with me. That's not MJ. It's just fucking Zendaya. But she and Tom Holland have really good chemistry in this movie. Tom Holland has great chemistry with almost every actor in this movie. There's a little bit too much of the cop. I didn't mention the cop because the cop is like so irrelevant. But she is somebody who helps cover for Spider-Man, and that's something I did like about the movie was the cops, the people of New York, all love Spider-Man. They're all rooting for him because the dude saves children. We see it in the movie. He saves several kids. He's fighting bad guys. It's cool. I like that. Now, there's a counter argument to that that's kind of a problem. How do we have a Marvel universe still in 2026 where the people love Spider-Man but they hate the mutants, which is basically what they're playing off of with Jean Grey and her sister Sarah Grey? Because honestly, it makes no sense. I've never understood that about the Marvel Universe, being a longtime fan. How is it that the public hates the mutants, but they love the Fantastic Four? They love the Avengers. They love Iron Man. They love Spider-Man. How is it that they hate the mutants, though? Now, this movie does not help that case because this movie shows Jean Grey basically causing catastrophic damage and collateral damage to everybody around her when she possesses people frequently and like body hops like a body snatcher, like an alien, before freezing an entire like 100-mile radius of people using telepathy, the way, like, if you saw Logan, the way that Professor X was using it in Logan. So she doesn't really help the case for mutants, if you know what I mean. But still, the hypocrisy is the same. How is it that people love Spider-Man and hate the mutants? I never understood that, and I don't like it in this movie. And so, I'm trying to think about what else. Yelena's appearance, I mean, aside from wanting to fuck the shit out of Elena, she's hot. Florence Pugh's hot. I'd fuck her. But aside from that, she's like naked in like the spa, and her talking about Spider-Man's sexual ambiguity. No, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like, you know, I mean, I don't mind the flirty nature between a Black Widow and a Spider-Man, but that pushed it a little bit too far for me. That pushed it a little bit too far. Now, the dialogue and the acting, solid. You know, all that's, you know, fine. It's solid. But I've said in my spoiler-free review that this is sort of like a B-plus movie. The plot is simplistic, but it's mostly character-driven. And the character-driven stuff is very, you know, it helps drive the movie, right? It helps push the movie forward because the plot is very simplistic. It's, you know, mystery box villain gets revealed and then find out that the villain was actually a victim. We've seen it 100 times in these Marvel MCU shows and movies. It just feels, you know, like we're repeating the same stuff just in a different flavor, and we're covering it with cameos and Easter eggs and stuff like that. We saw a Rogue cameo in a blink and you'll miss it moment. Several Star Wars cameos, or Easter eggs rather. And so, how does it tie into the grander universe? I'm not sure how this ties into like things like Doomsday or Secret Wars, or even how the future of the X-Men is going to be played out. Because Sadie Sink's still around. So are we going to see Sadie Sink come back as Jean Grey and face her crimes? Probably not, but is she going to come back at all? I wonder about those questions. We are definitely going to see probably another Spider-Man movie. I would hope so, at least Spider-Man 5. But ultimately, the biggest problem I have with this movie, and it's something I said in my spoiler review, is the humiliation of Spider-Man. The consistent and multiple humiliations of Spider-Man. Now, I get it. When he's Spider-Man, everybody loves him. There's a two-side of this coin where everybody loves Spider-Man, and I get that. The people of New York and the police should love Spider-Man. That's how it should be, because Spider-Man's a good character. Well, not just a good character, but he's a good person that is helping the people of New York. So him being liked by these characters is on point. However, there is a flip side where Peter does get humiliated. He's a nerd. You know, his girlfriend doesn't like him, or, you know, he steps on a piece of gum, or he's late to class, right? There's small things that humiliate Peter to sort of bring him down to earth, but this movie takes it a little bit too far. Things like him having to strip his clothes and hear about these ambiguous sexual things from Yelena was very humiliating. There's moments where he wakes up from his mutation sort of taking over his body and webs turning him into a cocoon, which was a cool scene, by the way. But he ends up losing his clothes. He has to break into a laundromat under his apartment and wear a woman's clothes. And we find out it's a woman's clothes because she shows up in the elevator. She's like, "Is that my shirt?" And he's wearing all of her clothes. So they have Spider-Man wearing women's clothes. So yes, there's a little bit of Spider-Man brand new gay in this movie. And so it's that stuff, you know, the fact that Peter gets cucked by this Paul guy, they decide to pull from that comic, you know, lore. And MJ rejecting him. Ultimately, MJ rejects him, and there's moments where Jean Grey cucks Spider-Man by using her body snatched corpse. I don't want to say corpse because she's not dead, but her body to basically tease Spider-Man by using telepathy on MJ to basically cuck Spider-Man. And the fact that we are still 4 movies in with Tom Holland Spider-Man, and look, I get it. I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man, but he's not really Spider-Man. We haven't really had a solo, independent Spider-Man where he's just on his own, doing his own things. He's still got the technology from Stark Tech, Stark Enterprises technology like Eve. He's still got the web shooters that he makes, which fine. The web shooters are fine, but he's got computers that give him everything, very much in the vein of like when Batman uses the supercomputer. You know what I mean? Like he's still got stuff like that normally he probably wouldn't have. He's also got help from the Hulk. He's got help from Punisher. These cameo characters that thematically are tied to this character, which is one thing that I liked. But the downside of that is that he does not work independently on his own. He needs the verification from the people like the Punisher, from the Department of Damage Control, the police lady, the Hulk. Like it needs he needs to stand on his own. We haven't really seen him stand on his own, and this movie was advertising that he would stand on his own, and we don't really get it, and I didn't really like that. But to end on a good note, I did like the thematic ties between all the characters. The mutation that turned Jean Grey into a monster, essentially, Peter can relate to that. He can relate to the mutation that turned the Hulk into Savage Hulk again. You turn Bruce Banner to Savage Hulk. There is thematic ties of evolution and growing and learning to grow with yourself and mature with your powers a little bit, and the trauma of losing somebody. And there's a great moment where Frank Castle is saying like, what I would do if I had my loved ones with me today? I wouldn't be wearing a mask. So that tells you a lot about the difference between Peter Parker and Frank Castle, and I really like that moment. There are thematic connections between each of those characters that makes it sort of a deeper thing that this movie pulls off that I really like, and it makes the cameos worth it. But nonetheless, it still needs to be a solo Spider-Man movie, and we don't really get that. But ultimately, I gave this movie like a B plus. It's like a 7 or 8 out of 5 for me. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff, and I'll come back and probably make another video if I have to, because this video went on way too long, going into spoilers here. But essentially, I think it's better than Homecoming and Far From Home, better than Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2, but it's not better than the Sam Raimi movies, and it's not better than No Way Home. That's where I put it. And for now, that's where I will leave it, because I'm sure I will have more thoughts later, which I will break down in other videos. But until then, leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, all that fun jazz. Turn on the notification bell. Have you seen this movie? Have you not seen this movie? Do you want to see this movie? Let's do some spoiler talks down below if y'all want to. And yeah, don't smoke crack. It's bad for you. Spider-Man, brand new day review. Spider-Man hits puberty.